Good afternoon and welcome to another information session for LEA Special Education Directors. So I'm going to give it just a minute or two to have people shuffle in, and then we'll get started.
Can you all hear us okay? Thank you.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We'll have, I'm sure, some people pop on to the virtual as we go. We have a few kind of announcements, housekeeping things, items. To start with. So this is our agenda for today. So we'll get a few updates with respect to EdPlan SC. Then we'll talk a little bit about LEA determinations, and this is basically the tiered requirements that we started last summer, to talk about those and what's needed for this school year. And then we'll hear from Ask, Basque, Skippy, and Task, our wonderful TA organizations, on their upcoming events and announcements. And then we will talk about SC Alt Assessment eligibility, and we're going to have Roberta Ford and Victoria Tanaka to help us out with that. So with that, let's get started with Katie.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Go ahead and flip that slide for me. So the EdPlan SC project, we all know it's very fluid, lots of moving parts from training to data migration, integration, and all the other processes that go along with that. I don't have a lot to update you on today, but wanted to share out some information. We have completed all of the power user training, and several districts have already started to complete their own training for their end users. Please don't hesitate to reach out as you prepare to complete the training. If you have any questions, the training site is available and will continue to be available to you through the life of our contract with PCG. I know I did receive an email that somebody was in a little bit of a panic because they thought they had heard that they weren't going to be able to train this summer using the site, and so that's not true. So I'm glad you're reaching out and asking the questions. Also wanted to mention that users can be manually entered into EdPlan SC in case you heard something different along the way. I put out communication related to EdPlan through the list I have of participants that registered or attended. So if there's someone in your district not receiving information, please contact me, as well as if someone needs to be removed from the list. And go ahead and hit that slide, please. So there is a release update document that is available. The releases were reviewed during the virtual office hours and reviewable in the training site on Friday. The FAQ document was also updated based on questions we received during the virtual office hours. Both are available by going to the Train the Trainer Toolkit tab on your dashboard. located at the bottom of the page. And I have a screenshot there of what that looks like and where that is. The FAQ will continue to be updated as we work towards transitioning to EdPlan SC. Next slide. If you haven't already submitted your list for the outside agencies, please do so. I actually did receive a couple today, so we're up to 60 submissions. I will be reviewing them later this week, and we'll reach out to districts if there are any problems with their submission. Once we go live and a change is needed for a local agency that you've chosen, that you've added, a power user will need to submit a ticket using Zendesk to get that information changed. The system is currently open, the ticket system. There's been a handful of tickets. I'm able to see the tickets on my end as well, which is going to be extremely helpful in ensuring a timely response and looking at trends and where districts might need additional support. Second language information. I have received a few questions about the drop-down choices for second language. That's in the evaluation section. The drop-down choices were confirmed with Title III and will be correct in the system next week. So what will happen is some of the changes that we're making, I will give them to PCG by Friday, and then they will push them out, during the weekend, and then they'll be ready for you all to see the following week. Those are some of those drop-down menus, those easily configurable items. So I just wanted to share what you were going to see in advance of the change. Next slide. Again, apologies again for last week. Phil did send out information with the links for the future sessions, and also the recording of last week's session, which was very informative. And we went over all of the changes that you're going to see in the site that happened on Friday. So all of that information is there in the recorded session. The link for the support form was also included in the email. Here it is again with the QR code. We just ask that when you're providing a request or submitting a request, you provide as much detail as possible when making the request, just so we know exactly what you're asking us to cover during the virtual office hours. And please continue to email me with your questions or concerns, or if you need assistance as we make this transition to EdPlan SC. And if you need anything, like I said, just let me know. And that is all I have for my updates today.
All right, thank you, Katie. I'm just going to do a couple of reminders for your fiscal year 21 LEA determinations tiered requirements. We talked about these last year, but just as a reminder, those 0 points plans are coming due. That is for all LEAs who received 0 points on any compliance or performance factor. You're expected to kind of look into those factors and develop plans to address those. Districts who were in needs assistance have already done this through their leader, so there's nothing additional as far as this separate email required there. This is primarily for those LEAs who were in meets requirements. You were asked to prepare a summary email to be submitted to OSIS kind of towards the close of this school year, and this is just a reminder about that. If you can please email the summary of the steps taken, how the progress was tracked, and results seen for each 0 points factor. You can email that to Elizabeth Moore at eamore@ed.sc.gov by May 1st, 2024. Again, that's for the different performance factors where you may have scored 0 points for meets requirements districts. A reminder for those who were in needs assistance, that final submission or end of year submission of the leader is coming due May 3rd. Please answer any of the remaining summative questions that are in the report. If you remember, we kind of did away with that second submission. So there should be several summative questions towards the end that need to be answered. And then please feel free to go back and add additional information or kind of amend what you previously submitted to reflect what you've done this year. The progress that you've made, the changes in your data, that sort of thing. We are looking to kind of see the growth throughout the year. And again, you'll submit that to me, Elizabeth Moore, at eamore@ed.sc.gov by May 3rd. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to reach out. And I'll turn it over to Susan.
Well, thank you. We've got just a couple of announcements if you can go to the next slide. We have some upcoming events. April 10th will be our first community of practice for teachers of students with extensive support needs. We know that in a lot of schools and districts, you have only a few, so we are trying to create a community where the practitioners who serve these students can meet together to share ideas. They'll drive the content of the community of practice. So the first one is April 10th. And of course, you can get information on our website, and we've put a tab there. If you go to Ask, our Academic Alliance, sc.org, our website, and look on our calendar, we have information there. On April 17th, we will have our third in a series of using the problem-solving model, which is really intended for any kind of teams who are doing database decision-making. Judy Elliott has been leading that, and we are recording them, and they are on the website, but it's not too late to join, and you can catch up, and we'll have some information in our newsletter about that. April 24th will be our evidence-based practice network. We will be doing a session on using progress monitoring data for instructional decision-making for students with extensive support needs. So we've done a lot of talking about the use of curriculum-based measures. This is really going to address those students who are in alternate assessment or students who have goals and objectives. And we're really happy that Dr. Kent Parker, who was formerly at Clemson, but is now back in the classroom in the Oconee County School District, is actually going to do that session for us. He's currently teaching and doing this every day, so we're excited about that. And I see Monica ask a question. Yes, we will record it and we'll have it on the website hopefully the next day. And also, just for all of you, we are still looking for our partner districts with the co-op. And there's information that you can see. We have a short video that we recorded. We have a description, and then we have basically a partner agreement. And just remembering that this is in hopes that we can start building a train the trainer model so that you have capacity in your district for those evidence-based practices to provide ongoing training. And so we'll kick off this summer at Summer University with identified districts who want to send people for that training. And then there'll be follow-up coaching and training throughout the year that will be virtual with our national experts. If you have any questions about that, we'll be glad to answer those. Just reach out through email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Next slide, please, Sarah. And this is Shannon Jones representing the Behavior Alliance of South Carolina. And BASS would just like to invite you all to join their upcoming April Institute. The topic of this institute will be on the implementation of function-based thinking. Those dates are April the 15th through the 16th. It is in person. If I remember correctly, it's in person, and you can register right there. They also have a bunch of other events coming up for April and May. You can go to bass.org to the website and look at their calendar and register and see all the great events that they have coming up.
Hello, and next slide, we just have one announcement for Early Childhood Inclusion Conference for Skippy, and we're accepting proposals now for breakout sessions for the conference that will take place on October 17th. So the call for proposals will be open until May 31st, and there's the link for you to access if you want to submit a proposal.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Joy Ivester with the Transition Alliance of South Carolina. And we are excited. One thing I want to highlight for everyone today is that we'll be offering diploma planning institutes in conjunction with the National Dropout Prevention Center and the Office of Student Support this summer. These are, save the dates, of July 9th through 11th in Columbia, and then another date in Columbia, Greenville, and Charleston. So if you received a 0 on any of those determinations in the area of dropout prevention or graduation, this is a great opportunity for you to address those areas. We're glad to help you identify and build a team. Registration has not yet opened for that, but feel free to reach out and contact us at the Transition Alliance if you'd like more information.
All right, and I think I'm going to turn the screen over to Roberta.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roberta Turner Ford, and I am with the Department of Education in the Office of Assessments and Standards, and I have my colleague Victoria Tanaka here with me, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself while I get my screen ready to share.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Tanaka. I'm team lead for psychometrics and data analysis in the Office of Assessment and Standards. Really what I do is I support Roberta in working with alternate
That's not
assessment.
what I want to share. Let me see. I'm sorry, Victoria.
No problem, I'm done.
Okay, let me do this again. I'm gonna unshare, and then I'm gonna try this again. All right, let me try this one more time. Sorry about that. Okay. Can you see the do you see the PowerPoint slide?
We do, yes.
Great. Okay. We are gonna talk today about, well, a question came in about using the confidence intervals for, and the standard error of measure and identifying students on the AUT assessment. So that is what Victoria and I are going to talk about today, the eligibility requirements and how we identify the students who take the alternate assessment. So this is our purpose, to define the alternate assessment, to determine the students who are eligible for the alternate assessment, and to understand the 1% administration criteria. So if we're successful, everyone on this call will be able to discuss the student identification process when you go back to your districts and identify the students who meet the participation guidelines. And I have this quote here, and I would just want y'all to take a minute to read and reflect on this quote. And also if someone can man the chat for me, because as we continue our discussion, I just would like for you all to continue to reflect on this quote. And before we start, I want to just ask, does anybody have any ideas about what exactly Mr. Peasley is referring to when he made that statement? Any takers? Okay, well, I think that's enough think time. So he was actually referring to, in the United States, these are all the 52 states or 52 states and territories. These are the number of students taking the alternate assessment who should not be, who are being misidentified. This is over the whole United States. So we are gonna look at the characteristics of the alternate assessment. And the alternate assessment is based on alternate academic achievement standards. The assessment is designed for students with significant cognitive disabilities who cannot participate in SC Ready or in a course, even with accommodations. And this is to ensure that those students are able to show what they know and also have an opportunity to participate in challenging standards-based curriculum, which is what all of our students should be participating in. And the South Carolina alternate assessment meets the IDEA and other federal requirements. And this is the portion of the Every Student Succeeds Act, which addresses the students who should be taking the alternate assessment. And it clearly states that the students who take the alternate assessment, that it should not exceed 1% of the total number of students who are assessed in the subject and grade level on the regular student assessment. So it's not just the 1%, but it's 1% of each subject. And this is how it's calculated. It's the number of students taking the alternate assessment divided by the total number of students testing from grades 3 through 8 and high school. And then I'm gonna, we have a little bit of data here that I'm gonna have Victoria talk about.
Thank you. So what I have on this slide is the number of students that were tested by subject for the last few years. So I'll give you a moment to look through that. And as you do, just a note that this does include 3 through 8 in high school together. To give a little extra context, pre-pandemic, we had maybe around 4,000 students that were testing in ELA and math. So what you're seeing here is that we have this upward trend in the number of students that are testing on the alternate assessment in each subject, with ELA and math in particular steadily approaching that pre-pandemic level. Social studies is relatively flat, but that's because we only have US history and the Constitution that we're testing those students on versus 3 through 8 in high school for the other 3 subjects.
All right. And thank you, Victoria. So we're going to talk about what are the alternate academic achievement standards. And as we look at these, what they are, there's something that I want you all to kind of notice, or is there anything that you notice as you look at this description? Nothing in the chat? Anything? What stands out to you? You can put it in the chat or you can unmute. Okay, well, what I want to point out is that the alternate academic achievement standards, they're on grade level content. They're just less depth, breadth, and complexity of our gen ed standards, and they're the same content. Okay, our alternate standards on the same content for our students as for the gen ed students, so that all students, no matter what assessment they're taking, they should be learning ELA, math, science, and social studies. And these are the performance level descriptors. So when we talk about less depth, breadth, and complexity, we have committees who look at the standards, the alternate academic achievement standards, and they're broken down into these 4 levels. And these 4 levels are how the assessment is scored, but it actually, these are where our students will fall. either, level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. And when we look at the level 4, if we have students taking the AUD assessment and they're exceeding proficiency, then we need to be taking another look at these students, and maybe the IEP team should be considering these students to take the gen ed assessment, because if they're exceeding proficiency, that means that they are mastering the standards. And that's what we're expecting of all of our students. So how do we determine eligibility for the AUD assessment? We have this wonderful guidance document, and I have a QR code there that if you want to pull it up, that document is located in the SCALT portal. And this document was developed back in 2012. I'm sure that all of you all are familiar with it. But this is our guidance that the IEP teams should be using when they are determining if a student meets the criteria, or the minimum criteria, I should say. And this page I want to point out specifically because as we look in column 1 and column 2, in column 2, when it talks about the cognitive ability of both verbal and nonverbal, and then it goes down and it says and significant deficits in adaptive, and then it says and students has academic skills that are on the emerging readiness. And so a lot of times I'll see the yes checked in column 1, but a student is only meeting the eligibility criteria in one of the items in one of the sections in that second column. And then when we look over in the sources of evidence, as we look, the top 2 sources of evidence is the results of the cognitive ability test and the results of the adaptive behavior skills assessment. Those are the top 2 sources of evidence. And then those other sources, those are supporting documents once we know students have meet in those first 2 sources of evidence. And this is off of the National Center on Educational Outcomes website. They have a lot of resources there about identifying the 1% and why we test the 1%. And this I copied, I got right from there just for you all to look at that only students with the most significant kind of disability should be participating in the alternate assessment, and the state participation guidelines should be followed when the IEP teams make this decision. And something to note, every state has their own guidelines. So something else that we need to consider when a student transfer in from another state and it says that they take the alternate assessment, well, part of when we evaluate that student, before we put them on the alternate assessment, we need to see if the student meets the guidelines for South Carolina. Because and the other thing, the decision should not be based off of the student's disability or the setting that they receive instruction or the amount of time that they're in the general ed classroom. Because I like to say when I'm doing training is that the SCALT assessment is not a placement. So this is South Carolina's guidelines for a significant cognitive disability. Okay, so it's characterized by ability scores in both verbal and nonverbal scales that are at least 2.5 to 3 standard deviations below the mean. And it goes on to talk about the if a student is in the average range, they should not be considered for the alternate assessment. And a lot of times as I go around to districts and I'm reviewing IEPs and reevaluations, and how many times that I have seen students with in the average range who are taking the auto assessment. And those students are, they do not meet the eligibility guidelines. And also, as we look on, they have to demonstrate deficits in adaptive behavior scores that are at least 2.5 to 3 standard deviations below the mean in at least 2 adaptive skill areas. And then I would like Victoria to talk to us about why we're not using the confidence intervals for these measures, or the standard error of measurement.
So we're not using the confidence intervals because then we would identify too many students. If you had a student that was maybe on the borderline, like on the edge of possibly being identified, the confidence interval might identify them as a student for the alternate assessment when really they would be capable of taking the general assessments.
Thank you, Victoria. So again, the criteria, we've already talked about. And again, I want to stress that these are ands, they are not ors. So significant cognitive disability and adaptive skills. They access the state-approved curriculum standards at less complex levels, and their adaptive skills require extensive direct instruction and practice in multiple settings. And further criteria, they're unable to apply or use academic skills across natural settings when instructed solely or primarily through the classroom, and inability to achieve state grade level achievement expectations is not the result of excessive or extended absences, social, cultural, or economic differences. And additionally, they're unable to apply or use academic skills across natural settings when it's, okay, we already did that. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Student identification. Oh, why am I? Okay. Yes, it is an IEP team decision, but it is based off of the participation guidelines. And no more than 1% of students should be tested on the alternate assessment. But again, I would just like to stress that the IEP team should be making this decision based off of the guidelines. And there's an update as of 2023, an update in the procedures for monitoring for going over the 1%, because previously the South Carolina Department of Education used the pre-code data only, and based off of the pre-code data, we identify the districts who were over the 1%, and then we would put those districts on monitoring notification. And then I would go through the process of analyzing the data from the districts. But starting with spring 2023, we also are using the post-test data, because we actually identified 3 additional districts, or 3 districts that tested over 1% who did not identify in pre-code as predicting to test over the 1%. So it's really important that we, well, one thing, make sure that we get those numbers correctly, but we really have to really be cognizant of the students that we're putting on the auto assessment and making sure that we're doing our best not to go over the 1%. But when I analyze the district's data, the first thing I do is look at the students who are scoring exceeds proficient in ELA and math. And most of the time, if the student who scores proficient in ELA usually scores proficient in math. Well, actually, these are exceeds proficient. And then also we look at the disability category. because if a student's only disability is speech language proficiency, they probably are not a student who should be taking the alternate assessment. Is okay. I don't know if there's anything in the chat, but so those are the things that I look at, and students who score level 4 in both ELA and math, those are the students that I'm going to ask to review their files. And again, if we see students with disabilities who aren't typically students with a significant cognitive disability, we'll be looking at those scores. I mean, looking at those students' files as well. And then I'll have to come out to the districts. I will observe the student. Several students or one student will observe the student taking the assessment, but I also will review their files to make sure that, number one, to make sure that they meet those eligibility requirements in the cognitive and adaptive areas. Do we have any questions or any comments? And the SEL portal, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, this is where all of the resource documents pertaining to the alternate assessment is. And it's also where you can go if you want to look at the test scores. If you are a SPED director and you don't have access to the SEL portal, you should ask your DTC to give you request district access so that you can go to the test coordinators area so that you can look at those scores, because you should be able to have access to the test scores for the students in your district. So, and if you can't contact your DTC to get you access, you can send me an email and I will make sure that you get access to the SEL portal and that centralized reporting system.
Roberta,
And-
this is Kim. You have a question in the chat.
Okay. Hi, what is it? Because I
Hi.
can't see the chat.
Okay. What kind of curriculum are districts using for their students that participate in alt assessment? We're looking into unique learning again, but I was curious as to what others are using.
Well, I guess because we're in the Department of Education, we cannot promote one curriculum or another from so I don't know if there's some districts out there who want to reach out and say which curriculums they are using, but I would just suggest, you know, a curriculum that that addresses our standards, that addresses our alternate academic achievement standards and our college and career ready standards, because they're the same. And I know Kim did put together a presentation, a module on how to apply instruction using our alternate academic achievement standards.
Yes,
Yeah.
Roberta, and everybody has that within their materials.
Okay, great. And another thing that you can do too is, like, within your districts, I know in your districts and your schools, they develop pacing guides. You can use those same pacing guides for your students to make sure, I mean, and they're not going to move through those standards at the same speed as the students in the general curriculum, but just as a guide to go along. But I'm sure there are curriculums available, but I can't like recommend one or another. Is there anything else in the chat?
Wendy has said that they use TeachTown.
Okay. Somebody else was going to say something too. Is somebody else?
This is Susan with Ask, and I would just like to say that we are really getting ready to ramp up our work for students with extensive support needs, which would include this population, and we'll be working with Dr. Katie Wolf at the University of South Carolina to work on strategies for selection. So that is coming soon.
Oh, that's great. She's my professor. I'm in her class right now. Okay.
She's great.
Yes, she is. She is wonderful. Now, I know that all of you guys know some rock star special educators out there. And I would love for you to recommend them for our committees, because these committees actually work on drafting the alternate academic achievement standards. They work on setting those scores. And we're actually having a standard setting for biology, because we just got new science standards, and we are going to be setting those cut scores for biology this summer. And we're also going to be doing an item review of all of the ELA items in the alternate assessment testing bank to see how they're going to align with the new ELA standards that we're going to develop. I mean, well, the ELA college and career ready standards are already developed, but we are developing the alternate academic achievement standards. And we're going to be, like I said, we're going to be reviewing all of the ELA items to see how they align. And we also have content advisory committees. That means we have committees that come together to look at the test items to make sure that there's no bias, to make sure that there is no to make sure that there's no bias, and that they meet the content levels and everything. And we'd love for you all to send me some I would love for you to send me some recommendations for people to be on these committees, because this gives them a voice, and so that they can see why it's so important that we have the right students taking the alternate assessment. And it's an overall really good experience. So please pass that QR code on, or pass the link. If you open up the QR code, pass that link on to any educators that that you think would like to spend a couple of days in Columbia with me working on these committees. We have quite a few. So this is my closure and clarity, and just as the stuff that we've gone through, just want to know, or just as just a self-reflection, if you can go back to your districts and share this with your SPED departments, share with them the criteria of the students who are taking the alternate assessment, and just discuss that identification process with your team members, so that we're making the correct decisions for the correct student. And can someone share a takeaway? You can unmute your mic or put it in the chat. No takeaways? I just told you a bunch of stuff you already knew, right? All right, well, Victoria and I would like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to share with you all. And if you do have any questions, this is my contact information. Send me an email or give me a call if you have any questions, or if there's any more resources that you can't get a hold to, just let me know. And that's all I have, Peter.
Thank you, Roberta. They did say that, the districts did mention as a takeaway that they're stressing the importance of using grade level instruction for content. So we really appreciate it. Today, we probably have a lesser crowd because of how many districts are on spring break.
Spring break, yes.
Yeah, so this is a lower, I noticed from the attendance that we're lower than normal, but we do record them. So there'll probably be a number of districts who view the recorded session. So we post that, and we record all of them, so they know that that today's was being recorded, so they'll probably tune in next week or the week after for that. So just to let you guys know that, that's why there wasn't as much district participation, just because there's less viewers today than
Okay.
usual. So anyway, that's the gist of that's the completion of our content for today. We thank you for tuning in. For those of you that are on spring break, a special thanks to those for using your free time for that. Otherwise, we wish the best for everybody throughout the state, and we thank you for all you do for students with disabilities, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.